Hi, I'm Danielle, and this is Chatter Out Loud, a podcast where I share thoughts and TV commentary, starting with one of my favorite shows, Big Brother. In this episode, I'm sharing a recap of Big Brother 23, Episode 5. This episode picks up after the HOH competition where we saw that Kyland won, and that's keeping him and the Queens safe for the week. And if you remember, the Queens team includes Kai, Claire, and Tiffany. Travis was just evicted, and they're now down to a 3-person team. In this episode, there were 3 things that made me laugh out loud. The first was right after the recap Big Brother gives, and they cut to one of the house guests making a comment. This time it was Alyssa using "Who the French do you think you are?" If you remember, Tiffany, Claire, and Alyssa were in the bathroom having fun talking about Frenchie and his behavior, and they began inserting Frenchie in the place of the F word. So I just thought that was pretty funny. All right, so picking up after the HOH competition, Kai appeared to be happy about winning the HOH as well as the other house guests. Frenchie's reign as HOH only proved that he was erratic and had a level of paranoia I'm surprised to see so early in the game. On the live feeds after the HOH, it was just interesting to see Frenchie's behavior get worse, almost to a point where, in my opinion, he appeared to be manic. You know, he was running around the house, pacing back and forth, blowing up alliances, talking in circles, being accusatory of all the meatheads, and just making little to no sense. And it didn't help that 2 people threw a rogue vote. And we saw in tonight's episode him claiming to know who threw the votes, but would never tell because that's not the type of person he is, and on and on and on. One thing I see more and more with Frenchie is he does a lot of talking, saying how he's a man, his dignity, how he played the game, he's the best player, he's making big moves, he knows the head of the snake, and blah, 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 blah. Mind you, we're only in week 2. And during his reign, that was week 3, and all that nonsense started on day 1 and 2. He's in overdrive again in this episode with his paranoia. And on this episode, they show some of the house guests worried about the votes. But in the end, we as viewers, we learned it was Derek F. who said he made the vote just as a joke. And then Tiffany made the vote, she did that doing a favor to Frenchie. It was her way of keeping in good standing with Frenchie in case the power ever shifts. That's what I think. And plus, it probably or prevented him from bothering her, maybe. The overarching goal for doing the rogue vote was Frenchie. The reasoning behind Frenchie asking to throw a rogue vote was so he can blame Derek X, with the hopes of making him a target. And I see that as strategy. I received a comment, I think on Twitter, or one of my videos, where someone disagreed with my thoughts on Frenchie and how much of a strategist I think he is not. I don't believe he's much of a strategist in terms of getting to the end of the game, but I'll give credit for planning to destroy someone else's game. I guess that's partly strategy as well. And I suppose that one angle of Big Brother is to try to throw off someone else's game, preventing them from getting to the end, especially if that's a target of yours. So in that case, I see Frenchie as being strategic in an attempt to thwart Derek X's game, although it hasn't been successful. All right. So anyway, the house guests chat and wonder who made the 2 rogue votes and why. They're still talking about it. And one aspect I wanted to note was that Tiffany did a good job deflecting when Frenchie was in the room with Brent and Whitney, saying that he knows who did the votes or who made the votes, and but he would never tell because that's just the type of man he is. Tiffany inserted herself right in the middle of that conversation, and she was able to keep Frenchie from talking about it even more, which I thought was a good move. And I thought it was a good move because it truly is something Frenchie could have told in that moment, because he's so anxious to get people's acceptance, and he talks too much. I think I said that in the first episode or episode 1 of the game. He just talks too much. And it's just he's too much. I'm glad this reign is over and his time in the Big Brother house is coming to an end. Nevertheless, she was successful in preventing Frenchie from saying too much in that moment. And as a follow up, Tiffany warns Kyland to be careful about Frenchie. And this just solidified what Kai was already thinking about Frenchie, because prior to Travis leaving the house, like an hour before the votes, they showed where Kyland planted a seed about Travis planted a seed when he was talking to Kyland. He planted a seed about Frenchie, talking about Frenchie's disloyal, and he's lying to people with the hope that Kai would take that information to use later. And I have to say, kudos to Travis, because I didn't think he knew the Big Brother game well. But this was a good move in the essence of Big Brother. So I thought that was interesting that he did that. And I'm like, kudos to Travis. He tried after all, right? Because I didn't think he was playing the game at all, and he didn't do well. But in that case, that was a classic Big Brother move. So kudos to Travis. All right, so we fast forward to Kyland's HOH room. Who wants to see my HOH room? They show the pictures and they asked him to read the letter. He was too emotional, so Tiffany volunteered to read the letter, and it was touching. He started crying, and but it was a moving letter. Then they cut to Tiffany being consoled by Azza. It was right after the letter, and I thought it was because she started missing her son, and this was the second thing. And this was the second thing of the night that made me laugh. So Tiffany was crying and she was being emotional, but it was all an act. She was faking it because that's like her and Oz's way to discuss the game. It was pretty funny to me because she turned it on and off every time someone entered the room. So I like that they've shown this because it further proves how strategic and well Tiffany is playing the game. I just love Tiffany. I'm Team Tiffany. All right, so the wild card competition this week, it was the Jokers. They decided Frenchie's going to play from the team. The Aces decided Fate, so they let Brent's name be picked out of a hat. So he's playing for the Aces. Well, not picked out of a hat. I'm sorry, picked out of the bag. So Brent is playing for the Aces, and the Kings decided that Sarah Beth was going to play. And this week's wild card competition had the same prize in that if you won, there's an opportunity to accept the wild card decision for your safety. And this week, the theme was an art museum and paintings. They had to answer questions correctly and be the first to score 3 points. It was pretty messy because if you answered correctly, you were sprayed in the face and the body with paint. So it was fun to watch, but it was one of those where I'm sure they'll be washing paint out of their hair for a couple of days. And I think they're have-nots, so they have to do that in cold water. Or Brent, at least. He's a have-not. His team is the have-not, so he probably had to do that with cold water. And then Sarah Beth winds up winning the wild card competition. She did not accept the wild card decision, which was to pick someone from the Queen's team to switch places with. I thought if she'd done that, it would not only remove that player from safety, but she would have been leaving her current team she's been playing with. So her not accepting these terms was the right move, in my opinion, for her. She was already safe with Kyland. You know, she has like a little alliance thing with Kyland, so she was already safe with him, so she didn't have to worry about being put on the block. And it would have just caused waves in the house. Taking safety from either Claire or Tiffany, that would have made her more of a target. It was the right move. All right, now with each HOH, it's an opportunity to get information from the house guests. Unlike Frenchie's HOH, Kyland managed his by only listening and asking questions. He declined to answer any of the house guest questions. He told them, I'm not answering any questions. He made that clear up front. And he even coaxed them into sharing information of value with him, right? So he would say, do you have any information for me? I don't know. I thought it was clever. It was a clever move the way he ran his HOH because it enabled him to see who knows what, and he compared stories, etc. You know, it also would reveal those players who are not in the know, right? So some people didn't even know what was going on because they could possibly be used as a pawn moving forward in the game, right? And it would reveal who is loyal to whom. And what I mean by that is the way people will give information and conveniently leave out names, especially those names that they're loyal to. So it was interesting to see that. And I thought he ran his HOH in those meetings, and he learned a lot in that case. I thought that was very strategic. So Kyland, he's playing strategically, and I like that. We as Big Brother fans, we like how all this is happening so far. And of course, after Frenchie has his turn, more erratic behavior ensues, as now he's walking around saying he quits the slaughterhouse, and he's frantically pacing around the house. He's talking in riddles again, and at this point, the entire house is just over it, right? The third and final comment of the night that made me laugh out loud was when Brent said in his confessional, because based on how Frenchie's running around and being erratic and stuff, Frenchie said if he behaved like this on one of his flights, because remember, Brent is a flight attendant, he said he would have had police waiting for him when he left the flight. I thought that was the funniest thing. Just the way Brent says stuff. He's so condescending and just, I don't know. It cracked me up. All right, so earlier I said that I'm not a fan of Brent. I really not. I think he's condescending and arrogant. I really don't want to be a fan. But I do have to say that he makes me laugh with his confessionals. I think it's a New York thing. I don't know. But he makes these comments and tries to offer wisdom around the house when he starts talking. And it's always like this soft tone and so calm and so like he's thinking through things. So, like he has it figured out. He's just so condescending. It's comical to me. Like when he was talking to Xavier, he was mentioning something like, yeah, everyone has a reason to be here. I mean, now it's getting to the point where people says, I'm playing, like somebody's playing for their family. Somebody's playing for a charity. He's like, yeah, now it gets to the point where people are like, I'm playing for a cousin. I don't know. I think Brent is funny in these confessionals. And just the way he carries himself around the house, it's just hysterical to me. And it really entertains me. I still don't want him to win, and I'm not a fan of him in terms of being a pick to be like that's going to like last throughout the game. So anyway, so by the end of the episode, the plan is to get Frenchie on the bench, on the block. What is going on? The end of the episode, by the end of the episode, the plan is to get Frenchie on the block. And that plan goes into motion. They show Tiffany's discussion with Kai and other house guests throwing him under the bus. Like, they were just throwing him under the bus left and right, and nobody held back. Brittany convinced Kai that she is loyal to her team, the Jokers, and see that this throws, by Brittany talking to Kai in her turn when she was talking to the HOH, by talking to Kai, Brittany showed her hand, and it basically threw up a red flag to Kai because Brittany is just loyal to her team. And so I think by Brittany, the way Brittany gave information in that moment to Kai, it just threw up a red flag and it just put her in danger. So at the nomination ceremony, Kai nominates Frenchie and Brittany. And these nominations did make sense to me. Brittany was put on there because she's loyal to Frenchie and the Jokers, like I said earlier. So she'd never vote against someone from that team. And Frenchie was put on the block because we all know why, right? He's erratic, he's causing problems, and it's just a good move. So on the live feeds, I saw some of the fallout of these nominations, and I wonder how much they will edit to give the appearance that Frenchie isn't as bad as he is on the feeds. So we'll have to see about that. And quite frankly, another observation I wanted to make is that it's getting old right now. Like, I'm already over Frenchie, but now I'm almost over Brittany. Because Brittany is running around the house saying, oh, well, why did they nominate me? I didn't do anything. And the whining has got to stop. Now, she has every right to be in her feelings and to feel some type of way. And she can, adjust her game to deal with that. But the whining in terms of why nominate me? I didn't do anything. And how hard she was crying and just carrying on. It's just like in the beginning, okay, you give her that. People get over it, get over the shock and stuff like that. But now it's just on the live feeds, it continues to go on, and I'm so over it. I don't wish that the house guests would change their mind. I hope the plan is to get out Frenchie and they follow through with that, because Frenchie does not need to be there anymore. And now he's walking around the house saying, I held my word. I said I wasn't going to send a person of color home and I wasn't going to send a woman home. No, you didn't, Frenchie. Frenchie, you said you weren't going to put up a person of color. You weren't going to put up anyone that came in the house with you from that group, and you weren't going to put up any women. You said you weren't going to put up any, and you did all of that. Like, it's just, he lies so much, and he's in the way he's trying to manipulate people's thinking in terms of, and he's one of those that if you say it enough times, it'll be true, right? And it's just fake news. And I'm so happy he's on the block, and I'm just hoping that, because there's a lot of time between nominations and the vote. And so I'm hoping they'll follow through with voting him out of there. And I'm really wondering, because I haven't kept up with the feeds over the past couple of days. I've tried to, or past couple of days. In the time that I'm doing the edit, the voiceover, it's been a couple of days. And I've had the opportunity to be in and out of the feed. So I'm just hoping that whatever he's attempting to do doesn't work. So anyway, I will be here for it all. I'll come back to share recaps and thoughts on all of the gameplay that ensues. So be sure to come back and give me a listen, follow, subscribe, leave me a comment, leave me a message. You can find me by looking for Chatter Out Loud. I have this podcast, I tweet, I'm on YouTube. So look for Chatter Out Loud and you'll find me. I also have links to where you can find me in the description, so be sure to check that out. So my name is Danielle, and you're listening to my podcast, Chatter Out Loud. Thank you so much for joining me, and I appreciate your support. And that's all I have. So thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.